Sound and fury. When we step back and look impersonally at life, we see a lot of drama that really goes nowhere and means nothing. Consider what Shakespeare was saying when he wrote that life is full of sound and fury signifying nothing. I've mentioned that I think William may have had some degree of enlightenment, as his perspective on life seems viable only from a detached viewpoint. This may be possible without enlightenment, but is more likely with. Consider his quote about the very nature of life and a person's role within it. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets this hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Consider yours and everyone's life in this light. It is all meaningless drama that just seems important in the context of being a self. But outside of that context, it can easily be seen as sound and fury, signifying nothing. Once, as I was flying over a city, I looked down and saw many rows of thousands of houses lined up next to each other. In each of those houses lived people, and every one of those people had a life that they lived as if it were real and important. They devoted daily efforts to acting out their vision of the life they thought they must live. Each may be different one from the other, but all were acting out the same basic drama of life, and each lived in relation to a story told about their lives. Beyond the mere physical aspects of survival, which are most often very simple and basic, none of these life efforts are necessary or real in that they don't contain any inherent meaning beyond the story told by each person, and this story is strictly conceptual, a made-up figment of mind. Unless someone identifies with and gives meaning to their story, it is just a meaningless story, even though it may be taken very seriously. As in a novel, the story might contain all sorts of woes and aspirations, adventures and doldrums, and as the reader, you might feel invested in it and its outcome. But once you put down the book, you see it is just a story that is unnecessary and unreal. So it is with your life story. The only reason you take it so seriously is that it's all you have, and it's your story. Sound and fury doesn't just apply to the turmoil that plagues us from time to time. It also applies to familiar states and routines. To be clear, even such states as being bored and lonely are part of the drama. The more mundane states are simply different forms of social drama. Although perhaps we see them as less energetic or low-key or routine, they are also really just part of the sound and fury. As well, engaging in theatrics over the lack of meaning in life, getting depressed about it, whining about it, or taking up some negative attitude about this fact is also more drama that is itself hollow and misdirected. People can flip between these two, getting caught up inside life's dramas, or getting depressed by the meaninglessness of life. But both sound and fury, and neither, are appropriate for our work here. Let's look again at William's quote concerning life and death and expand it to include what was said previously, but try to take the negativity out of it, which might be challenging since the play's character was rather disturbed at the time. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time. And all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets this hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Can you see everyone's life, including yours, in this light? Does this sound depressing or negative? Consider it is neither. It is an observation of the reality of a self and a life when you stop taking it personally. seeing instead the illusion of taking the drama seriously, including the ultimate end that is death. Of course, relating to this reality means turning our backs on the established insular life views to which we normally cling to avoid confronting the naked aspect of death and how it shines a harsh light on the meaningless drama of life. There is a reason we get completely caught up in this life drama and take it very seriously. We take it seriously because of the principle behind our very persistence, self-survival. We fail to notice, however, that no matter what we do, in the end, we will fail to persist. Life is a tragedy when seen in close-up, but a comedy in long shot. Charlie Chaplin. Let's start looking more into this domain that we take so seriously. Perhaps we can see it more clearly by making a distinction between what is more genuine in our experience and what is just fabricated wheels spinning away. When we recognize the huge amount of our experience that we might call false, we can more readily let it go. But it is good to grasp that what we consider fundamentally real will also die. So we will need to find a way to let that go as well. But let's start with what's clearly unreal and unnecessary. He who would distinguish the true from the false must have an adequate idea of what is true and false. Baruch Spinoza. Ineffective remedies. Within the sound and furious, not uncommon for people to feel dissatisfied with life or self that seems meaningless, worthless, isolated, or missing something important. From this underlying condition, many attempts are made to remedy our sense of malady and lack. Some of these solutions come from the community, such as religions, spiritual movements, or other shared belief systems. Some are found within the individual as a collection of beliefs, opinions, assumptions, or fantasies. These remedies might seem promising for a time, yet all are only additions, something placed on top of what's inherently present. They do nothing to clarify the real nature of what's there. Further, this whole dynamic represents just the tip of an iceberg. By engaging in such solutions, we only reinforce the creation of a conceptual self from which to relate. This self is always, in some ways, artificial. We need to realize that the solutions we've adopted are based on shared assumptions and therefore do not and cannot resolve our deep sense of being incomplete. The only way to do that is to get that we are already complete or experience directly what we really are. Adding beliefs and convictions or going through the rituals of life that promise resolution but can't deliver are futile activities. This is like someone trapped in a burning building, piling up papers all around to save himself. It ain't going to work. Directly experiencing what's already so is a very simple act. Yet so much seems to stand in the way of becoming conscious of our natures, it seems to become a complex task. The complexity lies in our conceptual identity, distracting our attention. But our nature is already simply so. If we could toss out all that isn't us, perhaps we'd be left with an experience of who we really are. How can we better recognize assumptions buried within the mass of taken for granted information that comprises ourselves and our knowledge? We begin by creating the ability to do so. This requires a number of skills, such as a deeper honesty than our cultural norm, a new level of self-discovery, and a degree of openness that will enable us to think beyond our assumptions. The main obstacle to increasing consciousness is assuming reality is how we think it is and perceive it to be. This keeps any truth outside of this experience inaccessible.